pretty often these days get newer dividend investors asking me questions like which is the best dividend stocks or ETFs to invest into, and I honestly most of the time respond with a simple answer: there's too many to just pick one. Now across my 7-figure portfolio, as you can see right here, that currently pays me upwards of $7,400 per month in dividends, I have around 40 different holdings in my dividend tracker, so it's pretty obvious that I cannot just choose one, and I like to have my money invested into a lot of different dividend paying stocks and ETFs. But in this video, to make it very easy for those investors that are looking for some dividend income style ETFs that are yielding anywhere from around 7 or 8% all the way to almost 30%. We're going to go through my favorite dividend paying ETFs within that range all in one video to give you guys an idea of some of my favorites across the market, at least as of right now. Now, this of course does not mean that these dividend income focused ETFs are perfect for your situation, your portfolio, but these are some of my favorites across the board. They yield anywhere from 7 to say 30% per year. So if you want to see the list of my favorite dividend paying ETFs that yield between 7 to 30%, make sure to stick around, drop a like down below, and let's get right into the first one. Real quick, for those that haven't already, make sure to go to the first link in my description and grab my new dividend investing ebook, where I share exactly how I went from $0 invested to now earning over $6,000 on a monthly basis and over $1 million invested in the markets. Along with the ebook, you're also going to receive my custom dividend tracker, where you can track your dividend progress on an ongoing basis and reach your dividend investing goals. So make sure to grab yourself a copy of my dividend investing ebook and the new dividend tracker today. It's the first link in my description. Now also keep in mind that we are not going to be doing a deep dive into every single one of these ETFs. I do that a lot on my channel, so make sure to subscribe and check out some of my other videos for that. We're going to be going through just some of the basics, give you guys the names of some of my favorites that of course meet this criteria. Number one being ticker symbol GPIX, the US Equity Premium Income ETF. This is the Goldman Sachs covered call style ETF, which I've been buying a ton of just as of recently. Now this is the S&P 500 Core Premium Income ETF, and the reason I really like this ETF specifically is of course for one, because it yields around 8% with a dividend that's been going up basically since inception, but on top of that, this ETF has a lot of capital appreciation tendencies because of the covered call strategy. Now as far as safety goes, of course this ETF is relatively new. It was formed around a year ago. This ETF, at least so far, seems extremely safe if you want something that yields around 8%, and of course, like I said, also has the potential for some upside. And speaking of Goldman Sachs, another one of my favorite higher income focused covered call style ETFs that yields around 10% now is GPIQ. This is the Goldman Sachs NASDAQ 100 Core Premium Income ETF. So this is basically the same thing as the last one, but instead of tracking the S&P, you guessed it, this one tracks the NASDAQ. Now again, this ETF does have upside potential because of the covered call overlay. And like I said, I do talk about these ETFs all the time on my channel. So definitely go through some of my videos, check them out. You will definitely like what you see. But so far over the last year or so, this ETF is yielding around 10% and has grown a ton over the last year. Around a 40-cent, 41-cent payout is what investors like myself have been receiving over the past several months, which gives this ETF a nice solid yield. Now, of course, in this video, talking about some of my favorite covered call style, income style ETFs that yield anywhere from 7% to 30%, I have to include JETB, one of my larger holdings as far as covered call or income focused ETFs. JETB currently has around a 7.14% dividend yield, which again is on the lower end considering a lot of the newer covered call style ETFs are yielding anywhere from 10%, 12%, 14%, even upwards of 20%. But still, JETB has traded up into the right long term, has had some decent payouts over time that haven't been always the most consistent. I mean, before these last few payouts, JETB's dividends have been pretty small. But the last few payouts have been larger, which is awesome, so hopefully JETB's turning a new corner. And like I said, JETB does make up a decent portion of my overall portfolio, and I like this ETF a lot. But speaking of JP Morgan, JETQ is one of my favorites, and I'm sure if you're watching this video, it's one of your favorites also. Across the dividend or income focused community, JETQ is extremely popular. It might even be the most popular, honestly. But JETQ is the JP Morgan NASDAQ Equity Premium Income ETF. This ETF yields almost 10%. And of course, because it references the NASDAQ, this ETF has a little bit more potential for volatility in my opinion. And as we can see here, it's paying a lot more than JETB has over the last 12 or so months. Not to mention JETQ has grown like crazy as far as price goes. JETQ, like I mentioned earlier, is one of the most popular for good reason. This is another holding in my portfolio. I've held onto JETQ for several years, and I will definitely be buying more JETQ on some future dip opportunities. Now to get into some higher yielding options, SPYI, the NEOS S&P 500 High Income ETF. This is one of my new favorite ETFs. I have not really shut up about this one over the last year or so, and I've been buying this one like crazy. I think as of right now, across my entire portfolios, all combined, I think I have nearly 600 or 700 shares of it. I'm not exactly certain, but I do have quite a portion of SPYI now making up a large portion of my portfolio. Around a 12% yield, SPYI is another covered call style ETF, of course. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. I've talked about it on plenty of videos in the past. It pays a monthly distribution of around 50 cents or so. As of recently, we saw a massive payout in August of 55 cents per share. But either way, even on the lower end, this ETF has been paying around 46 or so cents, which gives even a lower estimation as far as yield goes, around 9 or 10%. This ETF is traded mostly sideways, up a little bit to the right so far. It's relatively new, but still around a 12% yield. I'll take that all day. Another NEOS covered call style ETF. This is another one of my favorites, QQQI. I have way less of this one compared to SPYI, but still across the landscape, this is one of my favorites that I have been buying a few shares of, especially as of recently. Now this one offers around a 14.27% dividend yield, which is much higher than mostly everything we talked about up until this point. This ETF costs around $50 per share, more or less, unless I'm mistaken, and it offers around a 60 cent, 64 cent, 61 cent, or somewhere around there distribution monthly so far since February. Now, another thing I like about the NEOS ETFs, I'm talking about QQQI as well as SPYI, they pay more or less the same exact amount as far as distributions go on a monthly basis. Now, I know maybe you're saying, well, it hasn't paid the exact same amount, but it pays within a range more or less of a few cents, which is helpful, especially when you get to hundreds of shares. An example of this, a real life example of this, is that I currently own hundreds of shares of JEPI and JEPQ. I think I have well over 1,000 of JEPI actually. And the sort of annoying part about having so many shares of ETFs like those that don't necessarily pay the same exact amount on a monthly basis is one month I might receive a $300 dividend, the next month I might receive a $600 dividend. Again, both are great, but it's sort of nice to know or have an idea of a range of what you're going to be receiving instead of feeling like it's just going to be a gamble and you have to wait and see where volatility is in the up and coming months. Another one of my new favorites, this one is a higher yielder, SPYT, the Defiance S&P 500 Income Target ETF. I've also just started buying this one a lot as of recently. I think I have 200 plus shares across my portfolio. Now this ETF so far, at least, it's pretty new, but it's yielding around 20%, paying investors like myself around 30 to 33 cents, more or less every single month. Now this ETF has a different strategy than the other ones that we talked about. It sort of has a target for income on a yearly basis. They're trying to return around 20% for investors per year. Now, I can't speak for everyone, but that's amazing in my opinion. And even if SPYT traded sideways or even down a percentage every single year, as long as I'm receiving 20% or so dividend yield, I'm more than happy. So for those reasons, along with the fact that I'm trying to raise my overall income across my portfolio substantially, SPYT, like I said, is in my portfolio and definitely makes it on my list of some of my favorite higher income, higher yielders. Another one that definitely makes it on the list is SVOL or SVOL, the Simplified Volatility Premium Income ETF, around a 16.5% yield. This one did, as of recently, just drop their distribution to 0.28 cents or 28 cents. And this was as of September. A lot of income investors were a little bit angry about this, but keep in mind, even at this rate, this ETF still is going to be offering somewhere of around a 12 to 14% at least yield, even if it keeps paying 28 cents every month. Now, that being said, SVOL is in my portfolio, but it's still a small portion of my overall portfolio. I think across all my portfolios right now combined, I have probably 500 or so shares. But with a 16.5% yield, this is another one that definitely can bump up your overall income in your portfolio significantly with a relatively small amount of money invested. Now, last but not least, another one of my favorite higher yielders. This one is the highest of all, 27.79% for ZIBB, the 1X Short VIX Midterm Future Strategy ETF. This ETF shorts the VIX and offers a ton of premium, a ton of distributions for doing so. This ETF also has grown over time, and this ETF is relatively risky in my opinion, but it has done pretty well, at least so far since it's been trading. It's paid around $5.39 over the last year or so, and this is for an ETF that costs somewhere in the low 20s, I think. The ETF pays a steady rate of around 48.5 cents every single month, or at least has every single month this year, which again is a very easy, cheap way to get your income up substantially for an ETF that costs just under $20 per share as of right now. So those are some of my favorite dividend paying ETFs that yield anywhere from around 7% all the way up to almost 30% on a yearly basis. Now, of course, every single one of these ETFs are a little bit different. They have different strategies and different risk profiles, which means you're going to have to look into all of them yourself and see which one fits what you're looking for, if any, of course. But across my portfolio, I do have a small portion or a larger portion of every single one of the ones we talked about as of today. But now lastly, most importantly, I want to hear from you guys down below. As far as 7% to 30%, within that range, what's your favorite dividend paying ETF that offers that sort of yield? Drop the ticker symbol in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.